A Blessing to One Another, Pope John Paul II and the Jewish People, is a unique exhibit that seeks to commemorate, educate, and inspire. Visitors are immersed in a multimedia experience that tells the story of Pope John Paul II's lifelong relationship with the Jewish people, the title being drawn from a letter written by the Pope on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. As Christians and Jews following the example of the faith of Abraham, we are called to be a blessing to the world. This is the common task awaiting us. It is therefore necessary for us, Christians and Jews, to be first a blessing to one another. In the first of the 4 sections, the childhood of Karol Wojtyła is featured, covering the period from 1920 to 1938. The second section describes the war years he spent in Krakow, from 1939 to 1945. The third recounts his years as a young priest, archbishop, and cardinal in Krakow from 1946 to 1978. The final section celebrates the papacy of John Paul II from 1978 to 2005. One of the unique aspects of the exhibit is its construction. Rather than using blank walls on which to mount various items, the back walls have been designed to be an integral part of the experience. Here, we see the town square of Wadowice, Poland, the small town where Karol Wojtyła grew up. The background image is taken from a 1920s hand-tinted postcard and is enlarged to 8 by 20 feet. On this background are placed pictures, text panels, papal quotations, video monitors, and artifacts. The effect is stunning. And when sounds such as Polish music and the bells from the actual church in Wadowice are added, the visitor is drawn into a simulation of the world of Wadowice in the 1920s. Wadowice was different from other Polish towns during the 20s and 30s in that relations between the Catholic majority and the Jewish minority were not characterized by anti-Semitism. A central theme of the exhibit is that these early years instilled in young Karol Wojtyła an attitude of respect, dialogue, and friendship with the Jewish people. This attitude eventually extended toward people of all different faiths during his subsequent ministry as Pope. Karol counted many Jews among his schoolmates and friends. One classmate, Jerzy Kluger, son of a prominent family and one of the few Jews of Wadowice to survive the Holocaust, remained a friend for life. Both good athletes, the two boys shared a love of sports, especially soccer. Karol, known as Lolek to his friends, frequently played goalie for the Jewish team. Karol was a brilliant student who also distinguished himself as an orator and actor and served as high school valedictorian. The exhibit also describes the rich and diverse religious life of Wadowice, the church where Karol Wojtyła was baptized and confirmed, the religious life of the Jews of Wadowice. A number of artifacts from Wadowice are included. Here, a model of the synagogue and a Torah scroll. Video monitors are strategically placed that show interviews with people with whom Karol Wojtyła grew up and those who knew him at various stages of his life. The interviews were done specifically for this exhibit. The second section, The War Years, begins with September 1st, 1939, when Germany invaded Poland. This event marked a dramatic change for Karol Wojtyła, who had just entered university in Krakow. Life for all Poles, particularly the Jewish population, would never be the same. Here, the exhibit features a reconstruction of the gate to the Krakow ghetto and artifacts from Auschwitz, the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, and private donors who have generously lent these objects for exhibition. The papal household is one of more than 20 lending institutions and individual donors that have contributed materials. In this section, we see the horrors of the Nazi madness and genocide. It is a brief but powerful and moving experience, drawing visitors into the world that transformed Karol Wojtyła's life and set him on the road to priesthood. In addition to pictures, videos, and artifacts, this section features a memorial panel dedicated to the Jews of Wadowice who were killed in the death camps. Among those killed was the family of Jerzy Kluger. The third section introduces the world of Karol Wojtyła as a priest, archbishop, and cardinal in Krakow. These were also difficult years because the nightmare of the Nazi occupation was followed by the Soviet occupation of Poland under the leadership of Joseph Stalin. Here, as throughout the exhibit, the parallel and intersecting stories of the man who had become Pope and the Jewish people are told. During this period, Karol Wojtyła resisted the growing anti-Semitism in Krakow by maintaining relationships with the Jewish community, even visiting the Remus Synagogue in 1969. The section features artifacts from his years as archbishop and cardinal, including his cardinal's biretta, handwritten manuscript pages, and a 16th century Polish Bible. The section also focuses upon the Second Vatican Council, which began in 1962. Of particular interest is Nostra Aetate, the document that marks the beginning of the process of the Catholic Church redefining its relationship to the other religions, in particular the Jewish faith. It was also during the Second Vatican Council that then Archbishop Wojtyła and Jerzy Kluger reunited after not having seen each other since 1938. This friendship, which began in Wadowice and was renewed in Rome, would continue throughout his papacy up until his death. In many ways, the friendship symbolizes the story this exhibit tells. The final section draws visitors into the remarkable papacy of John Paul II, from his first private audience, which was not with a cardinal or head of state, but with his Jewish friend Jerzy Kluger, through his historic visit to Poland in 1979, which unleashed the spiritual and political forces that ultimately brought down the communist regime in Poland, to his historic 1986 visit to the Great Synagogue of Rome, making him the first pope in 2,000 years to visit a synagogue, and to his commitment to establish diplomatic relations with Israel. The exhibit concludes with John Paul II's visit to the Holy Land in the year 2000. Through videos, artifacts, and panels that are the largest of the exhibit, the visitor experiences the Holy Land through the eyes and words of the Pope, following his steps from Mount Nebo to Yad Vashem, and finally to the Western Wall. This section seeks to inspire visitors to take into their hearts and lives the virtues of openness, respect, and dialogue that characterized not just the papacy of John Paul II, but his entire life. The final panel is the famous picture of the Pope placing his prayer in the Western Wall. Visitors are invited to write their own personal prayer, which they then insert into a 20-foot replica of the Western Wall. Without being read, these will be hand-carried to Jerusalem and placed in the actual Western Wall. As an exhibit, A Blessing to One Another immerses visitors in an unsettling, yet beautiful and inspiring world as seen through the extraordinary life of Pope John Paul II. People come away with knowledge of the lessons he learned, important lessons of history, and they are inspired to incorporate these lessons and values in their own lives.